I think AI is just like every other innovation, advancement in technology. It's a big step change, right? So I think it's probably the biggest one we've ever seen, honestly. That's debatable whether it's the biggest one ever or not. It is a huge change in how we do business and how we do things. It's going to make us massively more productive. It's something I tell my kids every day. Like when I criticize them for something and they get very defensive about it, I tell them it's okay to be wrong. I am wrong all the time. I am wrong at least 3 times a minute. You have to acknowledge that you're wrong. That's the first step in learning and growing.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Long Game. In today's episode, I interview Assaf Weinburg, serial entrepreneur who has product experience, engineering experience, marketing experience, sales experience, and so much more. He's worked at some of the largest companies in the world, as well as built many, many different startups and worked in between all of it. We go pretty deep on how to build a company in this new era with basically no resources, using AI to get a competitive advantage and accelerate your growth. We talk about how to think about AI heading into the future, how to be an entrepreneur, what it means to be an entrepreneur, how to be a better employee, how to be a better manager, and how to make amazing, delicious sandwiches for your children. We explore so much in this conversation. I hope you enjoy it and subscribe. Why do you think that AI is going to bring in this smaller solopreneur golden age that hasn't been doable previously?
Well, I think AI is just like every other innovation, advancement in technology. It's a big step change, right? So I think it's probably the biggest one we've ever seen, honestly. That's debatable whether it's the biggest one ever or not. It is a huge change in how we do business and how we do things. It's going to make us massively more productive. So right now you have a little bit of this honeymoon period where all the established companies that have had to put a bunch of capital towards establishing the niche, creating the technology, creating the processes, hiring people. They have certain capital structures, they have certain people management structures, certain processes that do things at a certain level of efficiency. And suddenly, we've gone from zero to, whatever, GPT-4, Claude 3.5, like all these tools being available. And now everything is easier. But as you know, large companies or even medium-sized companies have institutional momentum that takes them a while to adapt these things. You can't just go fire everybody and start AIing everything, and change takes a while in organizations. So there's this golden opportunity right now for one or two people, or just a very small bootstrapped group, to identify what are some low-hanging fruit. What are some markets where companies, maybe they have 10, 20, 30 employees, maybe they're making a few million a year in revenue. Their product is not that hard to replicate, but especially with AI, you can go from zero to competitive with them, faster, cheaper, better, really fast, without having to go raise capital, without having to go, pitch VCs. And all of a sudden you're competing with them. You don't even have to do anything better than them. They could be marginally better or not, but your cost structure is so much lower. You could beat them on quality, speed, innovation really fast. So I think right now is a great time to be a solopreneur because the opportunities are everywhere.
One of the things that we talked about is the historical need for venture capital. In order to start up, there is startup cost. Costs are high with kind of building software historically. And so you need to kind of take external dollars to be able to build and have a chance of competing. And then even then, other startups maybe raise more money so they can go faster, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee success, but there's kind of this arms race from a capital perspective. But you mentioned, and we've kind of talked about, needing less venture capital, or maybe not even needing venture capital. Where do you think the relationship between entrepreneur and VC goes in this new era we're just starting to enter into?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think, again, this advancement in technology is just like every other advancement in technology. All of a sudden, things that were difficult and capital intensive before now become cheaper. And so that disrupts industries. Like the internet in itself, just go to in a very general sense, was just communication became cheap, right? It used to be that if you wanted to disseminate information, you had to invest a lot of time and energy and capital into creating distribution networks, into creating publishers and distribution and printing and feedback and so on. And so newspapers, movie studios, music studios, magazines, like all these publishers basically, they cornered the market because it took a lot of capital to get into that market to begin with. The internet came out, and all of a sudden, like, distributing information became free. Well, guess who got disrupted? All of those guys, because now some guy on YouTube or somebody with a microphone and a camera could now produce content and distribute that content to anybody they want to, and the best content wins. So he didn't need to raise any capital to start this podcast. So I think AI is exactly the same type of disruption, except it's broader than just cheaper information. It's taking manpower, it's taking like human effort and allow you to buy it for fractions of pennies off the cloud. Like, that's crazy.
It really is too, because communication and publishing still touches most industries, a lot of industries, but just like manpower, being able to have intelligence as a service and then have it way cheaper. I mean, that's impacts absolutely anything you can imagine can be impacted by that.
Exactly. So this is probably the third such wave I've seen in my lifetime. I've been in technology for 30 years or so, and like, you see this is coming, and every time, like, oh man, I wish I'd seen that and capitalized on that. Oh man, that was so obvious.
So, well, what would it have been? Like, if you had the crystal ball, it's 2017, 2018, you know this wave is coming, like, what would that opportunity to capitalize on have been?
Well, I think we're still here. The wave is not passed.
Fair.
Not one bit. I think this is exactly the time to capitalize on it. So, in the really abstract, if you look at what a company is, just most information companies or companies that do software, like a lot of companies are information companies, even accountants are information companies, Step all the way back, what they are, they take data as input, they apply their own proprietary data, the proprietary processes, and their execution capacity. So you take your own proprietary data, proprietary processes, and your people and tools and software and the ability to execute on it, and you transform that input data into more valuable output data.
So in the accounting example, I have my W-2 and other, pay stubs and whatever. I give it to them as information. They go through their processes of GAAP. Well, I guess that's more accounting, right? But like, they go through the tax process and they fill out forms, and then they transform that information into something more useful for me. Yes?
Exactly. It's documents in, documents out. It's data transformation. Mm-hmm. So many businesses are that. And what AI does is essentially takes that third element of what that business is, the execution capacity, and allows you to buy it for practically free, any amount you want, off the cloud. So that has some really powerful implications. That means that in the future, once we figure out how to mobilize all this stuff, the real value of your company is going to be your data and your proprietary knowledge and your proprietary processes. Your manpower, your ability to execute, is no longer going to be a differentiator between you and anybody else.
That's really interesting. I mean, it sounds obvious as you say it, but thinking about how your ability to execute has historically always been an extreme factor in your ability to do anything as a business. I mean, if you don't have the right people to be able to do the work, or if you don't have enough people to be able to do the work, or your people are too expensive to be able to do the work, then that breaks down the entire cycle of the business, and it's difficult for you to create value, to be in business, to be profitable, et cetera. But removing that pillar entirely and saying, no, it's now just coming down to how good are our ideas, i.e. our processes and our how we operate and our proprietary approach. And yeah, exactly, our data. That's interesting.
Right, and what's the most capital intensive part of a business? That pillar.
People. Yeah. So what does that look? I mean, again, it's fun to sit here, armchair philosopher, and kind of extrapolate out to some future that's absolutely going to be completely wrong because we just don't know. But what does an economy, what does a world look like where that labor piece is no longer a constraint?
I think there's a lot of scare tactics or a lot of hysteria around AI is going to take our jobs, AI is going to disrupt this. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think it's wonderful. I think it's going to mean smaller companies providing more point solutions, more direct connection to customers, and happier people. Like honestly, who's happy? Some people are, but like I'm not happy working in a big company. I think a lot of people are not happy working in big companies. You have these huge companies that do horribly inefficient things that are soul sucking for their employees, are frustrating for the customers, but are entrenched because of capital requirements to compete with them, or regulatory requirements or others. With the use of AI, you could have so many more creative small companies start up and do things differently, which and those companies are more fulfilling for the people who run them, and more fulfilling for the people who consume their products. So I'm very excited about it. I'm very optimistic.
Do you think we're going to move towards a world where we have more people that are not specialists and kind of more broad? I mean, I know you yourself have sat in so many different seats on the tech side, the product side, the engineering side, the business side, the sales side. Do you think that's naturally going to be what people have to move towards, rather than this world right now where we have deep knowledge of deep specialization from any vertical, and then you try to cobble together those people, but communication breaks down if you have someone from sales and someone from marketing and someone from engineering all working together? That's probably what you need to do, but it's still, the communication gets a little bit messy, and sales blames marketing blames sales, and technology is like, well, I'm going to go build some features, but that's not actually what we need. So do you think we're going to move to a more kind of holistic Renaissance man and woman type profile as being a better employee than what we have right now, which is deep focus on specialization?
That's a good question. I almost think it's the opposite. Because if you have smaller companies and the value you bring to the company is your knowledge and your data, then the more you specialize, the better.
Interesting. Interesting. So, like, give me for instance, like what would be a company? So, a 2-person company starting into, maybe we'll just take the accounting example. Like, who would be coming in with that specialized knowledge to differentiate versus another 2-person team that's trying to compete in the same space?
Well, they'll do you one better. We'll talk about the company that I actually have with my wife, which is a 2-person company that follows this exact model. So my wife, she is a PhD in biology. After she finished her PhD, she went into teaching. So she taught kind of college levels in the biological sciences. She taught a lot of pre-nursing students. She noticed one of the issues that they have is they have a hard time understanding, getting information, and getting prep data about the TEAS exam, which is one of the exams that you need to take in order to get into nursing school. So again, nursing, I think I'll fit in here, nursing, entrance, exams, TEAS. Like it is hyper.
Just like more specification, just every step down the stack.
Exactly. So super hyper focused. She knows these students. She's taught them for decades. She knows what the problems are. She has deep industry and vertical knowledge in that very, very tiny. I mean, she has other ones, but she knows in that very tiny niche. She researched that and put together a product, and I worked with her on it. So again, using AI to make things go a whole lot faster than they would have otherwise. We built a brand, we built a site, we built marketing automation, email content. We built a mobile app, an integration with Teachable, a quiz application, what else do we have?
And is this you and her, or do you have like engineers that are also building? And like, give us a sense of timeline for how you've built this out, and then also what the team looks like, and then also where you are from a success perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So she started the business, basically started ideating around the business, building that knowledge. That's the super important part. That's the part of the organized success is the year it takes to figure out what you're doing. So she did the course live, like over Zoom, once a month. Like 3 hours, 6 hours a week with students for an entire year, just to get in front of them and see what questions they have, to see how the course goes. To understand exactly what the problem is. She participated in all the online forums where they talk about this thing, to really understand the market and get deeper knowledge.
So that's like do the unscalable to scale and find product market fit just as scrappily as possible.
Exactly. And then you see who the competitors are, see what they offer, see what students like or don't like, do some surveys. So we gathered all that data as a business, as a tiny business, for a year. And I was still working full time, elsewhere at the time. Then we wanted to make this scalable. It took us maybe 3 months.
Wow. Using AI as kind of the workhorse of that 3 month
Absolutely.
period.
Yeah. So she did the content and recorded a lot of video and edited a lot of video, and created a lot of questions. I built the apps, like the quiz application, the flashcard application, and then also built an AI version of her. Her name is Amy. The AI is called Amy, AIMEE.
Nice.
AI me, in other words. And the AI assistant is actually embedded throughout the course, everywhere, through the quizzes, through the flashcards, through everything, and it
And
understands the.
you said built, like just like get a little technical. Like, is that like you? Yeah, just how did you build? What did you build on? Like, how technical are we talking? Is this someone that a product person could do, or is it really your engineering background that you're tapping into there?
I think it's a little bit of both. And for this project, I just tried to use as many pre-built pieces as I possibly could to make it as easy as fast as possible. So if you want to talk tech stack, we use Teachable, which you could host the video and host the e-commerce. Everything Teachable handles that. But then Teachable's quizzes were kind of not really the same as what you'd get in a Tease. So I built a custom quiz application, and then I built an integration with Teachable login so that when somebody clicks on a link in Teachable, it'll pop open our site, which is hosted in Vercel. Honestly, it uses Airtable as a backend. Like, Airtable is amazing. Like, you could get so far with Airtable, but Airtable is a content management system, and it has an API. So we have a CMS, a database, and an API without having to build any of it.
That's awesome.
And and,
Yeah.
and what makes it work well with Next.js and Vercel is that at least until 15, every request is automatically cached. And because this data doesn't change frequently, you're only hitting that API, very seldomly. So Airtable's not going to get super angry with you, blasting their services. So that's how the application is set up. We don't even have login. Like, we don't even have a user database. We don't host
Yeah.
like anything other than like a front end website.
I think that is it's helpful to just go into the specifics because it really is so the barrier to build a business and a light product around it is so low, and we think we need to spend all this time, this money, and build out custom software and build for 6 months or 12 months, and no, you just need to make sure that you have something of value to other people, and then you start building some processes in simple ways to add a little bit of leverage to that. And so you kind of built this out in 3 months. Where are you now? How long's it been? And I mean, I know you guys are doing very well, right? Like it's working.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been about, we launched it last Christmas, I think. So it's been maybe before that. It's been somewhere in there, 1.5 or 2 years since we launched it. It's grown like crazy. We now have the biggest tease focused Facebook group on Facebook. So
How big?
we own all that. I don't know. I honestly I don't know the numbers exactly. It might be some between about 50,000 or something.
Wow. Yeah. You're the
But
product guy.
exactly, I don't delve into those details. But the TikTok account is like 150,000 followers. It goes live twice a week. And yeah, it's been going really well. I think we're getting to the point where you're starting to get competition trying to sabotage you a little bit. Like,
Interesting.
it's a very small, incestuous little space, and you start seeing stuff pop up that's like a little strange, like what's going on here. I think that's a good sign. It makes you don't get shot down unless you're getting to the top. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to talk also. I know you've been working on kind of taking this playbook, refining this playbook, and then hunting for the next space you want to apply it to. So talk a bit about that journey, what you were looking for, and what you're doing now.
yeah, so that same philosophy. What can I find where there's not some space where there's money, but there's not a lot of tech, where my skills are a differentiator. I think in order to create a successful business, you have to have, well, at least three things. You have to have the ability to execute, yes, but you also have to have the domain knowledge to know what to build to begin with. And then you have to have the connections to be able to take it to market. And arguably, or not, that taking it to market is honestly the most important part. I think that's the part that technical people like me have missed in the past and continue to miss, is they think that building it is the most important part.
But
And
selling it is probably the most important part.
right, like you go to the supermarket and you go down the shelves and you take a look at all the stuff that you're buying there, and that is not there because it's the best food in the world.
Right.
That's there because
Right.
they got distribution right. So that's why you're eating corn puffs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really stark, clear example of, yeah, product maybe matters to a degree, but at the end of the day, it's about the connections, relationships, sales, marketing, all that kind of stuff, in order
Yeah,
to have a thing to be able to sell.
honestly, this number one is how to take it to market. Number two is what to build. Number three is how to build it. So, back to your question, I was looking for industries where my ability to execute is a differentiator, and to team up with people who have deep industry knowledge in some vertical that's sort of overlooked, where I could be a huge competitive advantage. I looked into a few different areas. I kind of followed an interesting model. The consultants out there might want to note this one. Instead of selling consulting services to people, I would try to look for partners for a business. And before partnering with them, I'd say, pay me as a consultant first, and then I'll decide if I want to work with you.
That
So
worked well.
yeah, it worked fantastically, both from a sales perspective and from a finding value perspective. Like, one, it's so easy to sell that way. If you're talking to someone who's looking at you as a partner rather than a consultant, rather than someone whose job it is to try to get money from you and then walk away as fast as possible, the sale is so much easier. Like, I mostly have to turn people down without even doing any sales and marketing. Like, you just walk outside and you with this pitch, and you have to beat them away with the stick.
That's awesome. It's almost kind of, I don't know, I was trying to relate it to the old adage, which is ask someone for money and you'll get advice, ask someone for advice and you'll get money. It's almost like that, where it's like you're not trying to sell them, you're just trying to find a partner, and because you find a partner, you find a client.
Right. You're looking to find a partner, and you started off looking like a consulting engagement where they pay you, and then you decide after you got paid and after you do some work with them after a month or two, is this somebody I want to keep working with or not? And if no, then you just walk away and you still got paid like you were a consultant, and you can just go to the
That's
next
a
one.
great deal. Great deal.
It's
Yeah.
a great deal.
So you went through a few of these.
Well, I went through a few of these, and I actually met up with these two guys who work in the HVAC industry. So they've been in there for a real long time, super well connected, and they actually work for a financing company that provides financing to HVAC contractors. And their job is to fly around the country and they're hired by distributors to give sales training to all of their contractors, to teach them how to run their sales operation. And that they get paid to do that. Everyone loves that, and they want to be able to sell a product that implements their sales training. And they're not technical people at all. Don't know how to begin even thinking about something like this. But that's something that I do, and HVAC is not something that I know. So it seems like a good marriage. And for the most part, what I'm looking for, besides the right industry and the right opportunity, is also partners who are just good people. At the end of the day, you're going to be spending a lot of time working with people. Yeah, you want to work on problems that are interesting, but honestly, every problem to me becomes interesting once you become interested in it. Then you're left with the people you're working with, and do you enjoy working with them? Are they good, honest people? Can you trust them? If they are, then I think the hard work is not hard work at all. I'm working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, and haven't worked a day. It's been a ton of fun.
What is it about technology, product, kind of your entire career has touched on these core themes in many different roles and ways, but how did you get into this space in the first place?
It's a lifelong journey, right? Do you have like a sound effect? You could do a little wavy, blurry thing, and
Like going back in memory lane or something?
exactly going back to childhood. So I grew up. My dad was an electrical and mechanical engineer, but he an entrepreneur. So he would invent machines and start businesses around them repeatedly. Essentially, that's what a startup is, right? You invent a technology and you start a business around it. Except back then they weren't called startups because they actually had to make money. So, silly little things like that. So I grew up sort of watching him do that and just watching him hustle through these things, for better or for worse. Eventually, one of his companies, one of the machines that he invented, it got bought up by a large jewelry manufacturer and Berkshire Hathaway, and then the rest is history. So that's sort of I grew up. That's embedded in me in entrepreneurship, right, and technology.
And quick question: as a child, right, looking at this, we all probably put our fathers on some sort of pedestal. But what was your relationship with technology? How did you perceive this thing? Was it like, wow, this is magic, or wow, this is helping people's lives, or wow, this is a way to make a lot of money, or this is a lot of freedom? Like, what was that relationship with technology, with business? Because you've always sat at the intersection of both technology and business. But I'm curious, like, 8-year-old Assaf, 12-year-old Assaf, like, what did you actually perceive it as with the kind of child-like experience?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Really, that's that goes down to what motivates me, right? And it's where does he get all these wonderful toys? Like, I love making stuff. Like, what motivates me is creation. Is like having some idea and creating it and making it and putting it into the world, even if nobody ever buys it, even if I don't make money on it. I'm not economically motivated in that way. It's just when I make something, it needs to be how it needs to be. It needs to be right, and that's gotten me into trouble throughout my career. Employment is not for me. I never really wrapped my head around that concept until recently. But I just want to make things that need to be made. There's just this I don't know, this pull to bring things into existence that I'm compelled to do. I don't know where it comes from. I just have to do it. I get up 45 minutes to an hour before my kids go to school in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I make sandwiches that you would not believe because they
You're gonna have to send me a photo of them.
my kids' teachers steal their sandwiches from their lunch bags.
All right, well, tell me a recipe, or like what did you make this week?
There's like a lot of different things. Like one of my favorites, the sandwich of fire and ice, as they call it. It's take celery and pepper paste and honey and kind of mix that together. Put that in the bottom of the sandwich with this sweet heat at the bottom. Put some turkey and ham on there, and then you get cold. You go the celery, pepper, and honey. Turkey, of course, you got to roll. You got to roll it a little bit. So we start with the ham, then you go with the turkey. Then you go with then you slice cucumbers, and at the top put goat cheese.
Wow.
So
wow.
Like, you got hot on the bottom and cold at the top, right?
Do your kids fully appreciate how amazing of a dad you are in this regard?
In the sandwich regard, I think it took them a while to figure it out, but after their parents after the teachers and their friends started stealing their sandwiches from their bags. And They start after the friends started coming to our house specifically to have their dad make them a sandwich.
You should put that on your LinkedIn instead of entrepreneur, just chief sandwich creator.
See, that's my retirement plan. Honestly, I want to go to like some resort town, on the beach, and just make sandwiches.
That's awesome. So you are a creator, and there is that pull to always be creating, whether it's a sandwich or a business or something in between.
Yeah, and that passion to create leads to what is perceived as hard work, or effectively the same thing as hard work, except it's not hard. Mm-hmm. And at the end of hard work, there's always a payoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of the I guess two things that I've resonated with, and maybe this is just an entrepreneurial thing, but the work of childhood is play, and I would almost argue that adulthood is finding play in adult life, because again, follow your passion, you never work a day in your life. But really what that means is if you truly enjoy and you're playing and you're just exploring and you're whatever that is to you, if you can find that in your adult life, then you find your flow state, which is kind of the second concept that I was going to tap in by that wonderful author whose name I will never be able to pronounce. But we all know it. It's good. Yeah. But, and that's kind of what it sounds like to you. Like, it doesn't matter how long you work because you're just playing.
Exactly.
You are literally having joy through the work that you do.
Well, what are we doing instead? Watching TV? I mean, it's like a ton of fun. It reminds me of a story. I did a startup. I did a bunch of startups, over the years, but one with my old Travelocity friends, and it was a travel data startup, and we're doing like a closed launch, and it was going to be like it was a flight search engine based on experience. It doesn't really matter for the story, but the CEO wanted me to just build like a page where you have to you give the press a login, and the press would log in, and it's a closed, private, preview. And it took me like 3 days or so to get this. He's like, "Why is this taking you so long? What's going on here?" It's because I was putting in an Easter egg where so the background is like skies and clouds, sort of, with parallax effect in the background. In the front, there's a little form just to put in a password. So if you type in up, down, down, left, right, BA, the Konami code, all of a sudden the music from Contra from the first level starts playing. The Contra dude falls down from the top of the screen and lands on the form. And you can control him with your keyboard. You can jump around and control this guy. And all of a sudden, one of those power-ups comes in from the left side, And you got to shoot that thing down. And if you shoot it down, the little Fireball Falcon thing comes down, and you go pick up the power-up, and it fills in the password for you.
That is incredible. That's so awesome. That's so cool.
Like, why is this form taking so long? It's got to be right.
The code's really tricky for this one, boss. I'm working on it, I swear.
It's up, down, down, left, right, BA.
Did you get it working?
Yeah, it worked.
That's so cool.
I didn't even tell him.
That's so cool. That's the whole point of an Easter egg, right? You gotta find it. That's so cool. And that is play, right? And I think that kind of stuff is also underappreciated, especially in big business. I want to go into like the employee mindset as well because, well, I think there's stuff we can explore there. But like, if people are happy and fulfilled and enjoy what they're doing, they will get more stuff done. And we kind of forget that because it's just so easy to measure these KPIs and how many deals did you close and how many tickets did you complete as a software engineer. But at the end of the day, there is kind of this nuance of human beings are beings. They're not just human doings. And so we need to kind of exist and play and create and wonder. And I think that gets lost a little bit. But if we move towards this smaller company space, I was just talking with someone yesterday, and they have it's a 2-year-old startup, and it's an early stage founder, and his whole thing is they all go get it was his birthday, and so they get Levain cookies, and then they hand them out to the entire building, just like going up and laughing and having a good time. And it's like that kind of play and creativity is necessary so that you can also focus on your work. So I love that story.
Yeah, it's something I struggled with a little bit as a manager, over the years, because I'm so self-motivated and I'm so like, passionate about creating that, when I've gotten to create my own teams and hire my own people and set the culture, I think that worked pretty well. When I have to inherit teams, it doesn't always work well. I've been on teams where like I give them, and this is my fault, for not reading the room correctly, but give them space, give them latitude, let them go towards the things that they think are important and do things the way that they want to do them. And sometimes you just get crickets and like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go hang out here and twiddle my thumbs. Like, oh, yeah. not everybody's this motivated. I didn't realize this. So
what do you think about the employee? Both you, I mean, clearly you said being an employee is not necessarily for you. But it is also for many people, right? Most people are employees and have a boss. So what do you think about how they should show up at work, and what company should they look for, and where should they be exploring AI? Kind of, what are your thoughts on being an employee?
Well, that last was an outlier question, so I'll save that one for last. But as a manager, I always asked myself, looked at my employees as individuals and asked, why are they here? What are they doing here? And it's not the answer is drastically different for people, and I think it's really important to understand what motivated someone to take a job, where they are in their lives, what purpose is this role playing, and make sure that you're able to provide what it is they're looking for, and at the same time find a situation in which them doing that also gives the company something that they need. So it's a bit of a two-sided puzzle.
Like deal making, like understanding what your incentives are, what my incentives are, and where can we have that intersect?
Right. So some people want to make money as much as they can. Other people want to work with people they like. Some people are looking for a safe place while they have kids and go through a time in their lives. Some people are really passionate about learning a specific skill that they want to grow their careers and skill up in something. And as a manager, if you don't understand what those things are, and you just assume that people are just looking for raises, you're gonna really miss the boat. It's why I think HR as a discipline is so lost. Like salary bands, it's such a wasteful idea because not everybody appreciates that perk of the job the same way as everybody else does. So it forces you to give people limited resources when they don't appreciate it or they don't want it, and then it forces you to take away those resources from places that would be more useful, a better use of those resources.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So we kind of, as a culture, we incentivize employment based on one type of incentive, whereas the reasons people take jobs and work is vastly diverse in terms of the motives that people have.
Exactly, and it requires a manager who cares about the people, who's going to take the time to understand them in order to figure out how to reward them and give them a fulfilling job. You know, HR or these sort of like managerial, executive level organizations were set up by people who were motivated by money. So they just assume that everybody's motivated by money. they roll out that same program to everybody. It's that lack of empathy in the corporate world is really a theme. I think not understanding what it is that other types of people are, what their needs are, and how to show up for them. I think that's the root of a lot of pain in the corporate world, is that lack of empathy and understanding.
So that's advice to the employer and the manager. What about for the employee? What should they be looking for?
I'm not sure this is going to be a popular answer, but I think understand why you're there. So it's the same exact thing from the employer side. From the employee side, why am I here? Am I trying to make money? Am I trying to learn a specific skill? And realize that your employer has their own motivations and their own goals and their own story, their own narrative going on. You've got your own narrative. How does my narrative fit into my employer's narrative? And does this provide me with a platform to achieve what it is that I want? It's okay to be selfish. Yes, well, you should be. You're getting paid money to do something that the employer finds valuable, but you are ultimately responsible for your own accomplishments. I worked at a bank very briefly, maybe about 10 months or so.
Big bank?
It is big bank now. I think it was a startup bank at the time, but this is definitely it's a household name. And I just felt like there was money flying everywhere, and everyone was just running around like crazy, but you just were not put in a position where you could accomplish anything. Everybody's rent seeking. They're just trying to figure out how can we cut the pie in such a way so that when the axe comes, the guy next to me gets his head chopped off and I get to step in and go move up the ladder and get more money. And it was a super easy job because they didn't really ask me to do anything. They paid really well. They had great facilities, and I think my boss even specifically didn't want me to do any work because he wanted the work to pile up so that they could hire more people, so that then I could become a manager. That was insane.
There's so many things wrong with that, but continue. Oh man,
this could be a long, dark conversation for me to get into. It was a very interesting experience. But anyway, eventually I left very quickly because I realized that even though it's easy and making good money, I am ultimately responsible for my own accomplishments. And if I can't accomplish anything here, and eventually I get laid off for whatever reason related to me or not related to me, because stuff like that happens in corporations, and I go to my next job and I interview there, and they say, "Hey, what did you do at Bank XYZ?" And I said, "I did nothing because they're stupid."
I did exactly what my manager asked. Nothing.
Exactly. That is not gonna reflect well on me, because they're gonna say, "Why did you put yourself in that situation?" So you have to put it on yourself to get yourself out of situations you shouldn't be in and into situations that are going to help you achieve your goals, first and foremost. And your employer should understand that you have goals, and you should be upfront with that. And those goals should temporarily align with your employer's goals until they don't, in which case you can part ways amicably. And I think that's
why do you think it'd be an unpopular answer? I think that's sound advice. I think it makes sense.
I forget. So, how it's coming out of my mouth.
Well, so shifting into maybe more controversial, I don't know if controversial territory, is the right term. But with AI, obviously there is kind of this, there are many narratives that are popping up, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's always kind of this fear of new technology, it's going to replace jobs, et cetera, et cetera. But if you had a team, I know you're kind of working on Lean Mean, you're building stuff
We
on
have
your
one
own.
employee now, one
Yeah.
FTE now.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Leveling up again. What would the advice be on, I mean, again, I think most techno optimists and people in technology understand that AI is not going to replace us all. It's going to be something that humans use to better themselves, to do more. But what advice would you have for maybe non-technical people that are employees that, have used ChatGPT instead of Google, but they don't really know what else to be doing with AI and where to look and how to get more engaged in it?
So advice for non-technical people about how to manage the upcoming disruption from AI, in other words.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, you have to realize that everybody's a company. Everybody's in business for themselves. Whether you're an employer, an entrepreneur, you're always in business for yourself. You are a product. And ask yourself, who's my customer? What problems does my customer have? What value do I provide as a product to that customer?
Interesting. And does that typically mean the employer is the buyer, or what are other examples of buyers of the customer?
Well, and that's just, if we're talking purely about employees, that means you're selling your services, or you're selling your product to one buyer. You have one buyer, which is the employer. You could change that. You could do contracting and have multiple employers. Have multiple buyers. Having a single buyer is a kind of dangerous situation to be in. But yeah, ask what problems do they have, and what value do I provide? What value can I provide that's more valuable to my buyers, to my customers, than I am right now? I think people need to get out of the mindset of just surviving, doing the 9 to 5, punching the clock, and having a job, and look at themselves as a product. I think the product management of individuals. And I think that once you look at that, you find so many opportunities, so many problems, because problems are not tough to come by. Your employer and other employees have a lot of problems and a lot of things that they wish would go away. How can you make those things go away? And they will pay you.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think the reframe is helpful too, because it means that, we all do this naturally to some degree, but there is iteration that you can do on yourself. Just like if you have a product, you can add a new feature, you can shift how you communicate it, you can shift its geography, you can target a different audience. There's so many different iterations that you can do on a product. And if you are thinking about yourself, same thing with you. You can gain new skills. You can communicate differently with your employer. You can go from, instead of B2B, you can go to B2C, which would be, instead of having an employer and having a W-2, maybe you go consulting and contracting, and you start taking on a couple clients and doing freelancing. I think that's a healthy kind of reframe that's also very approachable from a lens of, I can understand this concept. Well, how do I apply it to my life? And then what do I want to change about my life, if anything, or move towards? It doesn't have to be dramatic and drastic, but reframe and maybe start thinking about changes.
It's important, I think, for people to stop thinking of themselves as, I am this job. You are not a job. You are a person that can do many things, and looking around and ask, what are the problems that can help solve, and skill up, and present yourself in that way, and you'll find opportunities everywhere. No shortage.
To close us out, any parting thoughts around either reflections and lessons learned from failure over the years, or maybe looking towards the future, what you're excited about beyond what we've already discussed?
So many. It's been
in
so
which
long.
Direction? The failures?
Well, yeah, that's no shortage of those. It's something I tell my kids every day. Like when I criticize them for something and they get very defensive about it, I tell them it's okay to be wrong. I am wrong all the time. I am wrong at least 3 times a minute. It's you have to acknowledge that you're wrong in order to. That's the first step in learning and growing. If you're never wrong, you can never grow. And I think that's an ego issue. So yeah, I've been wrong so much. Here's an appropriate one. A mentor of mine. Yes, Josh, if you're watching this, you are a mentor. it told me a bit of advice to play the long game, and also appropriate for this podcast. And I was working at a consulting company at the time and struggling to figure out why I would do anything. There's no real benefit to working hard. There's no real detriment to not working at all. And like, what am I doing here? And Josh told me to play the long game, wait it out, understand what pieces are glacially moving, and it's that view not just applied to employment, but also applied to the macroeconomy, also applied to life, it's applied to everything. The world actually moves a lot slower than we think it does. Things move glacially, and you can see them come from a mile away. And just have the patience to wait it out and be in a position that you want to be in when it eventually happens, because it's actually going to take longer than you think. Lack of patience has always been an issue for me. So playing the long game is great advice.
I think it's those who think in years beat those who think in quarters. Those who think in decades beat those who think in years. And so it's not to say that you shouldn't have quarterly or yearly objectives, goals, plans, whatever. But you also need to have that bigger picture, that longer term lens, even from a lifetime perspective. Where do you want to be in your lifetime holistically at the end of it? And that's not to say only live for that, but be mindful and be aware that there is a long game, and being consistent, taking one step after another. When I started this podcast, the name is a little bit tongue in cheek, because my goal with the podcast was to consistently show up each week and ship one episode for 10 years. Like that is my goal with this. And it's not about some amount of subscribers or viewership, or obviously I'm a human and I like that, and that makes my ego feel good. But if I measure myself by, did I show up each week? Did I release an episode each week? And do I feel like I'm progressing and getting better at interviews and talking and listening and all the skills that kind of come with this? That to me is how I've defined success for the long game. And if I do it for 10 years and I feel like, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore, then I'll have 520 episodes and it'll have been cool. And
you will have learned a lot.
Yeah.
And you will have accomplished a lot, and you'll be happy about it. Right. It's be happy with what you're doing right this moment, always. And looking at the long game, when things get tough, when things get stressful at any time, think about the long game, and you can just shrug it off. So
yeah, perfect ending to a wonderful podcast. Thanks so much, Assaf.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you check out this video right here. And if you really enjoyed it and you listened to the end, take 2 seconds and share the love so someone else might find it by clicking the thumbs up button and subscribing. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. But click that button.